Ethical dilemmas are more common in the counseling field than we like to think. Professional relationships are complicated by the ethical mandates of beneficence and non-maleficence for clients, while simultaneously supporting one's colleagues and their growth. The ethical dilemma described in this presentation deals with ensuring a client's safety, fulfilling the responsibility of being a gatekeeper for the profession, and serving as an effective and supportive supervisor. To begin with, I would like to talk a little bit about Amanda Pinchot, who I interviewed on November 11th and who is a licensed clinical professional counselor, as well as the site director of Advanced Behavioral Health in Frederick County. Her experiences throughout her career have greatly contributed to her current role, as well as the decision she made when she experienced an ethical dilemma. To start, her master's degree originally focused on marriage and family therapy, but as she worked to fulfill her degree's clinical hours requirement, she found herself primarily working in schools. That experience inspired her to switch to the counseling track, and she became licensed in 2010, originally in Virginia. Her clinical focus today is on children, adolescents, and families, but she has acted in managerial roles as well as clinical roles. Her first clinical role was located in Virginia, and it focused on children, adolescents, and families until she obtained a managerial role within the organization. Later on, she relocated from Virginia to Maryland and went back to clinical work at a residential treatment facility. That facility addressed children and adolescents with diverse issues ranging from victims of sexual assault to those who committed sexual assault. She then became the clinical director of the facility, and while her work focused more on administrative duties, she continued to work with the children and adolescents, just with a smaller caseload. Later on, the organization expanded into the inpatient setting, where her services focused more on crisis management. In her words, that work was short but intense and tended more towards group work. While a vast majority of the residential facilities were being closed down in Maryland, Amanda took a position where she oversaw other residential facilities for a very short time. Unsurprisingly, however, she was laid off, but at an opportune time for her. After she had her daughter, she accepted a job from Advanced Behavioral Health, which focuses more on clinical outpatient care, but with a strong emphasis on children and families, as well as advocacy, which perfectly suits her experience. Amanda has been with Advanced Behavioral Health for 7.5 years, and she currently oversees a team of clinicians as the site director of the Frederick County location. She works with a wide variety of diagnoses and diverse individuals and their life circumstances, which range from socioeconomic challenges to the worried well. And while she greatly values the experience she had in crisis management, which puts a heavy focus on the here and now of managing mental health problems, she loves the fact that advanced behavioral health is not involved in that sort of service and has more of a focus on prevention and education. Since, in her words, mental health is not discriminatory, Amanda emphasizes the need to intervene with and educate communities on the impacts of mental health, especially after the impact of COVID and with the rise in elementary-aged children with behavioral issues and the increase in adolescents struggling with anxiety and depression. The ethical dilemma Amanda experienced occurred during her time as the clinical director in the residential treatment facility. During that time, she oversaw a team of clinicians, including therapists, who were earning their hours to become fully licensed. The facility was divided into 5 units of children based on age and gender. At one point, there was a suspicion going around that one of the facility's floor staff, who have daily contact with the clients, was having an inappropriate relationship with one of the teenage clients. The first thing Amanda and her team did was check the footage of the cameras that were stationed around the facility. The footage revealed that there was, in fact, some kind of relationship between the staff member and the adolescent. There was also sufficient evidence to demonstrate that the therapist of the child, who was being supervised by Amanda, was friends with the floor staff and was aware that the relationship existed between the floor staff and the adolescent, but failed to take any action to confront the staff member, protect the client, or alert Amanda. Once Amanda had collected enough evidence, she called Child Protective Services and made the necessary reports. She also fired the floor staff member and the therapist, who were then both investigated by Child Protective Services. Of course, the child was ultimately re-traumatized as a result of the entire situation. Later on, Amanda had to account for the hours the therapist had put into the facility, but she ultimately did not recommend them for licensure despite their dedication to the clients and their hard work at the facility. Amanda noted that even though her first instinct is to defend a member of her team, she acknowledged that she must always put a client's safety first. As far as she knows, the fired therapist is currently licensed to practice, which indicates that Child Protective Services must not have found enough evidence of legal misconduct to prevent them from becoming licensed. In hindsight, Amanda has come to believe that the therapist had talked themselves out of truly seeing what was happening between the floor staff and the child. This observation highlights the importance of constant self-evaluation in order to become a competent therapist. The therapist obviously put too much weight on the non-professional relationship they had with the floor staff and too little weight on their professional relationship with their client and Amanda, their supervisor, and by doing so, they failed in their duty to warn and protect a vulnerable client. When asked about the lessons Amanda learned through her experience with this ethical dilemma, she described realizing why supervision and asking the right questions is so important to the field. Similarly, even if she or one of her team members had any suspicion, no matter how small, the call to Child Protective Services should be made. Amanda also learned to detect her supervisee's apprehension, stress, and any struggle to build rapport with clients. This detection ability is critical to the gatekeeper's role, which protects consumers by identifying and intervening with supervisees who exhibit problematic behaviors. This is a critical ethical issue for training faculty, and one that was unfortunately late to be addressed in the ethical dilemma Amanda experienced. She also learned what questions to ask based on what she hears from her supervisees, and in particular, she listens for evidence of a hero complex, which occurs when clinicians see themselves as the people who come in to save the day for their clients. Ultimately, this hero complex only serves to foster client dependence and may indicate a therapist's countertransference. Both client dependence and countertransference may become ethical issues if they are not addressed, and Amanda recognizes that as a clinical supervisor, she must address those issues. Her overall message is that supervision is key in the counseling field because you are dealing with relationships. The only way to ensure that ethical, effective counselors are being produced is through supervision by a qualified professional. But, as Amanda notes, being personable with your colleagues and supervisees while also balancing your responsibilities as a supervisor and as a gatekeeper can be a fine line to walk. The legal statutes that apply to this ethical dilemma include the Maryland Mandated Reporters Law and the 34 U.S. Code 20341, Child Abuse Reporting Law. According to the Maryland Department of Human Services, you are a mandated reporter if you are a health practitioner, an educator, a human service worker, or a police officer. Reporting does not require proof that child abuse or neglect has occurred, and incidents are to be reported as soon as they are suspected. Here is where Amanda should have acted more quickly. She decided to obtain proof of the floor staff's misconduct by reviewing the camera footage to ensure that her suspicions were not unwarranted. While that may seem to be an appropriate course of action, according to Maryland law, reporting does not require proof, and waiting for proof may involve grave risk to the child and impede services. Overall, professional judgment and knowledge should be used to evaluate any suspicion rather than relying exclusively on physical evidence. The 34 U.S. Code 20341 Child Abuse Reporting Law states that covered professionals, which includes psychologists, psychiatrists, and mental health professionals who learn of facts that give reason to suspect that a child has suffered an incident of child abuse, including sexual abuse, shall, as soon as possible, make a report of the suspected abuse to the agency designated by the Attorney General. While this law is specific to facilities and agencies that are acting on federal land or in federally operated or contracted facilities, the rule of thumb is the same. The law does not require proof that sexual abuse is occurring, only suspicion. Under the Child Abuse Reporting Law, it states that all persons who, acting in good faith, make a report by subsection or otherwise provide information or assistance in connection with a report, investigation, or legal intervention pursuant to a report, shall be immune from civil and criminal liability arising out of such actions. Amanda may have sought evidence before contacting Child Protective Services and firing the therapist and the floor staff because she was concerned about potentially being subject to a civil or criminal lawsuit. But as the law states, even without proof, her report would have provided her immunity. As a rule, fear of retribution should never be a reason to postpone performing one's duty to protect vulnerable clients, as that is one of the most important ethical and legal duties that mental health counselors have. In the ethical dilemma Amanda experienced, there are also codes under the American Counseling Association that apply. Under Section C of the American Counseling Association Code of Ethics, counselors have a responsibility to read, understand, and follow the ACA Code of Ethics and adhere to applicable laws and regulations. The therapist under Amanda's supervision failed to follow this code or completely ignored it. Similarly, Amanda did not seem to have read and understood the applicable laws as previously discussed before taking action against the floor staff and the therapist. Thus, the client was exposed to harm for longer. Counselors must also take reasonable steps to consult with other counselors, the ACA Ethics and Professional Standards Department, and/or related professionals when they have questions regarding their ethical obligations or professional practice. While Amanda did consult with her colleagues, the therapist being supervised did not, which resulted in harm to the client. Counselors must assist colleagues or supervisors in recognizing their own professional impairment and provide consultation and assistance when warranted with colleagues or supervisors showing signs of impairment and intervene as appropriate to prevent imminent harm to clients. Amanda did later recognize that the therapist could not distinguish between the professional and personal relationship with the floor staff. During the situation itself, she should have been more proactive and asked the therapist about their relationship with the floor staff as soon as any suspicions were raised, rather than waiting to see if the therapist would come to her in order to prevent any harm from coming to the client. Under Section D of the ACA Code of Ethics, counselors who are members of interdisciplinary teams must work together with team members to clarify professional and ethical obligations of the team as a whole and its individual members. When a team decision raises ethical concerns, counselors should first attempt to resolve the concern within the team. If they cannot reach a resolution among team members, counselors should pursue other avenues to address their concerns consistent with the client's well-being. While Amanda was only the clinical supervisor at the residential treatment facility, she was a member of an interdisciplinary team, and as such, she could have taken preventative steps to educate all of the facility's members on the applicable legal and ethical codes and regulations to deter them from violating them, or at least inform them of how to handle a situation like the one that occurred. Ignorance should never be an excuse, and one way to prevent ignorance is through education. Going forward, To ensure counselor competence, Amanda and other professionals should be careful not to assume their supervisees have completely read and understood the ACA Code of Ethics. Rather, they should build in meetings and activities designed to consistently reinforce the ethics codes and make sure they are top of mind with all of their supervisees. Under Section F of the ACA Code of Ethics, a primary obligation of counseling supervisors is to monitor the services provided by supervisees. Clinical supervisors must monitor client welfare and supervisee performance and professional development. To fulfill these obligations, supervisors should meet regularly with their supervisees to review the supervisee's work and help them become prepared to serve a range of diverse clients. While Amanda realized the importance of asking the right questions and listening for concerning behaviors in her supervisees later, such as the hero complex, making sure to have consistent supervisory meetings and creating a space where the supervisee feels that they are able to share their questions or concerns with their supervisor is essential to protect client welfare and promote the growth of their supervisees. Similarly, under the ACA Code of Ethics, supervisors must make their supervisees aware of professional and ethical standards and legal responsibilities. Again, education is paramount to preventing unethical behaviors from occurring. While the therapist may have ignored their ethical and legal responsibilities, Amanda could have continuously gone over those responsibilities with her team members and reinforced them to ensure their complete understanding. As mentioned, counselor competence is an ongoing process, and continuing education is an important avenue to address. Lastly, through initial and ongoing evaluation, supervisors must be aware of supervisee limitations that might impede their performance. Supervisors should assist supervisees in securing remedial assistance when needed, and they also recommend dismissal from training programs, applied counseling settings, and state or voluntary professional credentialing processes when those supervisees are unable to demonstrate that they can provide competent professional services to a range of diverse clients. Supervisors should seek consultation and must document their decisions to dismiss or refer supervisees for assistance. They ensure that supervisees are aware of options available to them to address such decisions. Amanda ultimately did uphold this responsibility through her decision to recommend against licensure for the therapist and dismissing them from the facility. And yet, she could have intervened earlier had she paid more attention to the therapist's limitations, including their failure to successfully navigate their personal and professional relationships. Section I of the ACA Code of Ethics details how to resolve ethical issues. Specifically, in the case of a suspected violation, if an apparent violation has substantially harmed or is likely to substantially harm a person or organization, and it is not appropriate for informal resolution or it is not resolved properly, counselors must take further action depending on the situation. Suspected sexual abuse of a minor is a severe violation, whether it was actually occurring or not, and further action, such as contacting Child Protective Services, as well as dismissing the therapist and the floor staff member, was warranted. Ultimately, Amanda did respond to the ethical dilemma in compliance with the ACA Code of Ethics, but her decision to seek evidence of the suspected misconduct cost the client valuable time during which they were re-traumatized. As this presentation demonstrates, Amanda ultimately learned from her experience and has applied that learning in her current position as the Site Director of Advanced Behavioral Health in Frederick County. Her experience served to reinforce the importance of effective supervision in the counseling field. Ethical dilemmas are just that, dilemmas, and hindsight is 20/20. The best thing she or any counselor can do going forward is strive to uphold the laws and ethics codes that apply to any situation and learn from the experience to ensure that future counselors are equipped with the knowledge of how to effectively navigate a similar situation during their careers. Thank you.